Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are
the FAIRtax guys.
FAIRtax guys. Oh, you forgot your scrolling banner, and I've got a new toy. Look at that.
What is that? A hexagonal? What do they call a hexagon?
This is actually called a Megaminx. That's the name of the puzzle. The geometric the description of the object is a dodecahedron. It's got 12 sides, and it works kind of like a Rubik's Cube. You know, try to get each face its own solid color.
Does it come with a pack of headache tablets?
No, this one's actually this one's easier to do, so it's not a problem. But
well, the reason we show that all the time, and especially the Rubik's Cube, is because it's like the tax
income. That's the income tax. It is just all screwed up, and it takes an expert to put it back together. Most people can't do it. So
I don't have the brain for that. I tried, and I'm looking at it and go, that's a pretty puzzle. But
I will bring this up to the radio station in October and show you how to do this. It's really not that difficult.
We can put a contest together and have anybody that wants to come to the studio while the show's going on, and if they can operate that thing between the start of the program and the end, we'll give them a FAIRtax shirt.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. The only thing that might mess that up is the early hour on Sunday morning. If anybody's up that early, I'm sure there's somebody there in Winston-Salem that can do that puzzle. But anyhow,
I absolutely know. I know 2 or 3 people right off the top of my head. How have you been? Everything going well down there in Florida?
Everything is doing well. Of course, hurricane season has started now, so now we have to keep an eye on the hurricane map every day. But I want to keep an eye on something else right now.
Yeah, I know. We're getting ready to start a fire at congress.gov.
If we can light a fire under the congress.gov, folks, we can do some stuff. There's some pretty cool stuff in here this week. And again, what we do every week here on FAIRtax Power Radio, you go to congress.gov. There's a search function up there at the top of the page. You put the words Internal Revenue Code in quotes in that search function. Over on the left side to make sure you've checked legislation only and only in the current Congress. And then when you click the go button to initiate the search, as of the date we're recording this, that search brings back 1,711 hits where the Congress critters are trying to mess with the Internal Revenue Code. And at the top of the list today is H.R. 7926, to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to provide for a suspension of the highway fuel tax and to impose a temporary fee on excess oil profits. So look at that. Gas is close to $5 a gallon now.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, the federal fuel tax is like 18 cents a gallon on gasoline, 24 cents on diesel. So you got a $5 gallon of gasoline, and they're going to give you 18 cents worth of relief. Boy, is that going to make a great big difference.
And the states have a challenge because a lot of the road work that's going on now, some big projects are happening. A lot of that funded by the federal transportation budget, but other things are funded through the gas tax. Here in North Carolina, it's 37 cents, I believe. 37 sounds about right. Gas on my corner, near where I live, went from 4.25 last night, the night before we were recording this. It went from 4.25 to 4.45.
Yeah, that's about what's going on here. We'll see a jump, then it'll edge down by about 3 or 4 cents, and as soon as that happens, it jumps up another 20.
So they're going to give us the 18 cents off of the federal gas tax, and that's a drop in the bucket. It theoretically, I think you go out there and it's kind of a psychological thing too. You see the prices drop overnight or they go up a little bit. So you have this emotional roller coaster. The people I'm concerned about are those that are at the poverty level, living paycheck to paycheck, and that sometimes in some places. The cost of a gallon of gas, or to fill up for $5 or $10 here, you can hardly get a gallon in your tank, for what it would cost you to go to work in the first place.
Yeah, but listen, the second part of that thing is what really galls my gizzard, to impose a temporary fee on excess oil profits. who gets to determine what excess oil profits is? I mean, what's the threshold that makes a profit an excess profit? I don't want the government, anybody in the government, making those kind of decisions in a free market economy.
We don't need that precedent being set anywhere. And of course, the always the question that we ask is, what's this whole proposal doing in the tax code anyway?
Well, I can see the suspension of the highway fuel tax being in the tax code, but the temporary fee on excess oil profits, I guess they just call that a tax as well.
And who's the guy that's going to figure that out? Who's the guy that's going to say, hey, we think that you've made $10 billion in profit in the last quarter. Now we're going to take what we consider to be excess. Yeah, what the heck is excess profits anyway? Profits is profit.
Well, there is no text in this one, so I can't see what the threshold is if there is one. But to answer your question, I can tell you who wants to make that decision. That's Adam Schiff out in California. This is his bill.
Well,
he's the one that starts it that way. So,
God bless all those fine folks up in Washington. God bless them.
Let's scoot on a little bit here. HR 7909 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide for an exclusion from gross income for compensation of certain school resource officers, and your favorite phrase, for other purposes. I thought you were going to jump in there.
You thought I was going to say it. For other purposes.
Well, I was trying to set you up. You just watch that.
It's like the appendix that rolled right by me. I'm like going, what was that? Squirrel. Oh, it's a squirrel.
This is another one of those things. You see these all the time. Of course, school resource officers certainly provide a very necessary and essential service, especially in light of all the incidents that have gone on here recently in the news, and the public attention is on there. So somebody jumps in this case, it's a Representative Randy Weber of Texas, jumping in and saying, okay, let's give these school resource officers a break. We will exclude from their taxable gross income the compensation they receive as school resource officers. And that's one of those things. Well, how can anybody be against giving a school resource officer a break? And nobody's really against giving a school resource officer a break. But the thing is, if you're going to give those people a break, what about ambulance drivers? What about firefighters?
Right.
What about emergency room physicians? There are plenty of, really essential type workers providing those kind of services that we need, and that the tax code starts picking out which ones are going to get a break and which ones don't. That is just flat out wrong.
Well, and it's favoritism, but at the same time, you got that bill going in, and then 2 weeks later, somebody comes back because somebody's raising Cain that they weren't included in that type of
that's just it. You can't. And the tax code picking winners and losers. That's why we have to get rid of it and treat everybody the same.
It just keeps growing. And the whole deal with this weekly delving into congress.gov is to kind of underscore, some of the things that are in there. Just, you have to stop and scratch your head and go, why the heck is this in the tax code? If you had the FAIRtax in place, a tax on consumption versus a tax on your income, you're going to be in charge. You, me, Bob over there, the other Bob down in Florida where it's nice and hot right now. We all get to choose how much we spend. It encourages savings. As we get into our next segment here, you'll learn there are a great many benefits to having the FAIRtax, specifically a tax on consumption.
Our time's getting away here. Let me do just one more here before we get on to the main portion of the program today. HR 7902 to amend this one caught my eye because I'm a rail fan. This says to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide a tax credit to encourage the replacement or modernization of inefficient, outdated freight rail cars and for other purposes. So now I'll just toss that out there without a whole lot of comment other than say it was about trains, so it caught my eye.
Well, and you have to, if you're going to build an interstate rail travel, you have to have the safety for passengers is different than the safety for freight. The type of rail, and you would know more about this than I would. but those things are important.
Yeah,
The
well,
question becomes,
certainly, you want to have the highest standards of safety in place for passenger carrying trains. But I don't know about you, but I think I want to have the same degree of stringency in the safety requirements for freight trains hauling explosives or ethanol or
oh,
something like
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, I just remember in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, when they were bringing rail travel, proposal was to bring travel from Conway, South Carolina, into Myrtle Beach at the train depot that's there. And they were saying, well, we could do tour trips from Myrtle Beach to Conway and back and forth, but they had to have a certain type of infrastructure there for the safety of passengers.
The
versus
rails
the
have
one
to
that
be
brings all the
maintained to
beer
a
in.
certain standard in
Yes.
order to do that. But we need to move on here because we started last week series on FAIRtax Power Radio, just digging into the FAQ.
Yes.
At FAIRtax.org. It is a very extensive FAQ. We could spend 4 or 5 shows going into stuff like this, but we did one last week, and we're gonna hit a few more highlights this week, and then we're gonna move on to something else here for the next week on FAIRtax Power Radio. But let's dig into the FAQ here at FAIRtax.org. And this is a question that you're going to get from a lot of people. Will corporations get a windfall with the abolition of the corporate tax? And let's say right off the top of the head, there are people who don't understand that the fair tax replaces the income tax. That's a concept that escapes a lot of folks. They have a hard time getting their head around it. So when we're talking about the fair tax, we're talking about absolutely, positively obliterating, getting rid of, throwing on the scrap heap of history, all income taxes, personal and corporate, get rid of the IRS. So somebody says, well, if we're not going to have any corporate income taxes anymore, those big, rich, evil corporations are going to get a windfall, and that's wrong. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, corporations are veils that protect individuals. A corporation is not a real thing, although it acts like it is. They do not.
It's a legal entity that exists only on paper.
Well, that's right. And they'll never bear the burden of taxation. The tax that they have to pay is going to come to the people. And of course, corporations are certainly structured to either be public or private or S corp or the C corporation. From a tax standpoint, they're treated a little bit differently. But corporations pass their tax burden on in the form of higher prices or lower prices to consumers, or higher or lower wages to workers. And then, of course, the investors, the shareholders, get lower returns or higher returns, depending on how the corporation is taxed. So you hear people say, we need to get the corporations to pay their fair share. I hear that more than anything right now. But who is the corporation? The corporation is the shareholders. And I'll bet you a dime to a dollar that people out there that have a 401k, more than likely your 401k is involved in the investment in corporations where you directly benefit or lose based on the success and how that particular corporation handles its returns. The things that they give a quarterly earnings report and they announce a dividend, and you get that dividend in the form of a check or purchasing additional shares, whatever happens. The idea that taxing a corporation reduces taxing on, let's say, the working poor is just absolutely insane. A corporate tax only makes what the working poor buy more expensive, and it costs them jobs, lowers the lifestyle, delays their retirement. Under the fair tax plan, money retained in the business and reinvested to create jobs, build factories, develop new technologies, pays no tax. This is the most honest, fair, productive tax system possible. Free market competition will do the rest. What that means is that when the fair tax goes into effect, competition is going to weed out all of the costs involved that were normally associated with the tax on the cost involved in bringing that product or service to market. So corporations won't necessarily get a windfall. They're just going to retool because they're always going to be interested in putting out a good product competitively, and they're going to work to bring money into their investors in the form of
people think that corporations are going to get a windfall or operating on the assumption that they're going to have this large reduction in the cost of doing business, but they're going to keep their prices the same. In other words, they're going to screw everybody and not pass that say. And as it says, the free market competition will make sure that everybody's cost of doing business goes down, nobody tries to keep it all, because all it'll take is one to say, I'm going to pass this on and I'm going to get all the market share, and everybody else says, no, you're not, we're going to match you. So that's what's going to go on with that one. And,
fantastic.
Oh yeah. Now here's one that
this thing, the FAIRtax.org/FAQ, folks, if you go on the website, you'll be able to follow along with us, but there are so many questions that are out there, and you may have some that you would like to propose or that you have been thinking about. We would be more than happy to turn Randy Fisher on to some good.
If you got a question, just post it in the comments and make Randy answer it. That'll work.
That's right. That's what we'll do. Okay, Randy.
Let me scroll on down a little bit here. These are two separate questions within the FAQ, but they're really kind of related. Why not just exempt food and medicine from the tax? Wouldn't that be fair and simple? And then the other one says, why not just exempt necessities from the fair tax instead of providing for a rebate? And the answer to that is, we want to keep the fair tax simple. You may think it's real easy to define what food is, but walk into a grocery store and tell me which items in there are food and which ones are not. Go into a department store and say, which items are a necessity for people to have and which items are not. Yes. And I don't know about you, I don't want the government in there trying to decide for me what my necessities are. Whatever I choose to spend my money on first, food and clothing and the essentials, $5 gas and everything else that we got to have.
Right. But we get to choose. We get to decide what the necessity is. And the other thing about this is that those who have money will send lobbyists to Washington to obtain special tax breaks in their own self-interest if we start talking about, well, we're going to tax this one, but we're not going to tax this product. The door will be wide open to lobbyists and special interest groups that plague and distort the tax system that we have right now. And that's probably one of the reasons that all of those proposals end up at congress.gov to amend the tax code for certain people to have a benefit.
So it is neither fair nor simple for government bureaucrats to come in and be making those kinds of decisions as to what gets taxed and what doesn't. Just tax everything at the cash register, rebate back to everybody the taxes they pay on their spending up to the poverty level. They can decide what their necessities are. They can take care of their family before they feed the government out of their own pocket. That's fair and simple. Trying to get a bunch of exemptions and things like that is not fair, and it's not simple. And you can read more about it in the FAQ here.
Absolutely. It's a great resource. Answers a lot of questions that people have, and there are a lot of questions. And once you begin to think about it, this fair tax thing sounds pretty good. You're going to start digging in and you're going to have a lot of these questions that are answered in the FAQ at fairtax.org.
Yeah, try this one. What about the flat tax? Wouldn't that be better and easier to pass? Better
income tax.
Well, yeah. Well, easier to pass, yes. Better, no.
Right. Well, because I remember Steve Forbes years ago was saying, well, this is, you'll have a little postcard and you write down all the money that you made and that kind of thing. Now, like it going, well, I don't think that's it, because, well, the Internal Revenue Service, for one, and that's the big one, is going to still be in existence. And it leaves the door cracked open for a continuum of an income tax, because the flat tax might be 15% now, but, well, you know what, we're going to need to raise that up to 22. And then you're going to end up with 5 tiers or 3 tiers, or you're going to be graduated like it is now. And again, the big thing is flat tax, still an income tax. Flat tax is still an income tax. Fair tax, tax on consumption, gets rid of the Internal Revenue Service. And wouldn't you say that's about pretty much it. It's pretty
Absolutely. That's
simple.
what people need to insert the word income between flat and tax, a flat income tax. And I'm reminded with what happened in the state of Illinois a while back. They have on the state level, they had a state income tax that was a flat tax, same rate for everybody. And there were people there saying, that's no fair. We need a graduated system so that the people with higher incomes pay a higher tax rate.
Right.
So, well, if the flat tax is not fair at the state level, what makes you think it's fair at the national
That's
level?
right.
There will always be people who aren't happy with what they've got and want to change it to something else.
Well, and I always go back to this, you know, we are a generation that did not live through a time where there wasn't an income tax. So we're, all of us, are trying to get our heads around what this is going to look like. It's like stepping into a dark room and you don't know where the furniture is laid out. You really want to have a map. And these FAQ answers that are on here at least get you started in a way to advance your understanding of the fair tax, so that you can be, so that you can kind of shine a light in that room and understand a little more about where things are laid out and how it will absolutely revolutionize our economy. And boy, and yes, I'll go back and say what I did a week or so ago. We really need a jolt right now that will sort of help things out. Don't you think, Bob?
Yeah, I tell you what, folks can go back into the archive and dig up the last Wally's World where Jade was talking about the fair tax and the effect it might have on this awful inflation that we're experiencing in our economy right now. That was
315 show 315.
I don't remember the episode numbers, but it was Wally's World, the fair tax versus inflation. People need to go back and check that out. It was
like 3 or 4 episodes ago, I think.
Yeah. All right. We need to move on. Our time's getting away from us. Answer me this one, my friend. Could we end up with both the fair tax and an income tax? That's a question in the FAQ. Well, and the answer is
no current supporter of the fair tax would support the fair tax unless the entire income tax is repealed. 16th Amendment, gone. Internal Revenue Service, gone. Moreover, concurrent with the repeal of the income tax, a constitutional amendment repealing the 16th Amendment and prohibiting the income tax would be pushed through Congress for ratifications, filed as HJR 16. That was back in the 110th Congress when that was brought about. But you know, we sit here and we talk and think and breathe and eat tax on consumption, the fair tax being the perfect model for that. There are a lot of people that are out there that just get confused about, as you come to understand what the fair tax is and how it replaces the income tax, all the pieces that go into doing that. It makes you kind of come away with a better feeling about it. But until then, everybody's like, well, wait a minute, what? You're going to do what? And I think that's where a lot of people in Congress are right now. They're trying to figure out, well, if we do this, because they got to be talking about it at some level. It's been out there a long time. The fair tax, and they're going, look, how are we going to get our foot in the door on how are we going to make sure that we can still do what we do up here in Washington? I think that's where we're at. We won't have an income tax and a fair tax.
So the Reader's Digest answer to can we have both the fair tax and an income tax is no. There will be a small window. I mean, there's nothing right now. We have an income tax. There's nothing prohibiting Congress from putting a consumption tax of some kind in effect and having both an income and a consumption tax. That has not happened now when it's not restrained. But the permanent implementation of the fair tax is contingent upon repealing the 16th Amendment. And when that happens, income taxes become unconstitutional again, and it will be all but impossible to re-implement one.
Right. And it's happened before. It's been repealed as unconstitutional. The income tax was repealed, back before the turn of the other century, back before 1900.
Yeah, I do. And there's one more here that I want to get into. That's actually, I missed it when I scrolled past it. Does the fair tax improve compliance and reduce evasion when compared to the current income tax? Now, there's a big long answer in there. How about give us the $1.98 version of what that says?
Well, tax evasion is chronic under any system so complex as to be incomprehensible, like the tax code that we have. As a percentage of gross domestic product, tax evasion over a decade ago almost 20 years now, is beyond 2.6% compared to 1.6% in 1991. It's representing over 16% of taxes due. 40% of the public, according to the Internal Revenue Service, is out of compliance, most unintentionally due to the enormous complexity of what we have to go through to get our taxes done. Think publication 17. All of this, despite a major enforcement effort and assessment of tens of millions of civil penalties on American taxpayers in an effort to force compliance with the tax system. Disrespect for the tax system and the law has reached dangerous levels and makes a system based on taxpayer self-assessment less and less viable. The fair tax reduces rather than increases the problem of tax evasion. The increased fairness, transparency, and legitimacy of the system induces more compliance because you're going to pay for your taxes when you buy something, when you buy an item, a service, or product, and a new one at that.
And I would just steer people here while they're on the FAIRtax.org site. Up at the top of the menu across the top, there's a research tab. And if you open up that research tab, about the fifth item down under there is evasion. So if you click on there, you look under evasion in the research section, there are there are 3 links there, one of which is to an article that Jade Wally wrote in September of 2020, the fair tax's expected effect on tax evasion. And I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of that one. He says the fair tax will reduce evasion by just about 95%.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you want to go read Jade's article on that, that's under the research tab and the evasion sub tab under there at fairtax.org. And that's pretty good reading. And I tell you what, our time is flying away from us again. We got about 2 minutes to go. And again, we would encourage anybody that has a question about the fair tax. We haven't mentioned our email address here in a while, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. So questions or comments about the fair tax, we're certainly happy to take them. We have in the past taken questions that people have sent to us at that email address, researched them and referenced them here on the program. So we can continue to do that. Thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. Of course, we've got our Facebook page. You can leave comments there as well. And so, good, all thoughtful comments and questions we'll certainly deal with and bring out the answers on Fair Tax Power Radio.
We want people who watch the program on a regular basis or listen wherever you might happen to be getting the show. We want to encourage you to have conversations with your friends and coworkers, to folks in your neighborhood about this, because we are living in a time where tax on consumption will make a big difference in our economy. And the big thing, of course, is it puts us back in control of when we pay taxes and how.
Absolutely. Well, I say, we mentioned again that there is a huge amount of information there in that FAQ. We have only just touched the tips of several icebergs here. But if you want to get yourself an education, or if you want to steer your friends who don't know about the fair tax and need an education to the best resource you can possibly get to learn about it, just go through that FAQ. It'll take you a little while to get through it all. But the FAQ at fairtax.org is just an amazing resource. And we are amazingly out of time one more time. So I got to thank everyone again. Got to thank everyone again for watching and listening. Hopefully you will share these videos with your family and friends. But until we meet again, we are the Fair Tax Guys. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
Reminding you, as we always do, the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you will demand it.
Fair tax is coming.